Meow, meow, meow. Everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everybody, Cantonese Cat here, GameStop monthly chart. I'm going to tell you a story here in terms of what I think GameStop's going to do, in terms of what it's trying to do, and in terms of what I think it's going to do. If you just look at a higher time frame, I'm going to put up the Bollinger Band over here. It's going to tell you a story, and that story is this: price wants to go higher, but the Bollinger Band simply hasn't been expanded enough to allow things to do that quite just yet. If you look at the 3 month chart, the Bollinger Band, upper Bollinger Band is around like the 50s, and it just keeps on getting rejected over here so far during these past couple of months, right? You look at the 2 month, same thing. In Bollinger Band, upper Bollinger Band around like 55 or so. So for price, it's just unable to get above the upper Bollinger Band. It's just going to be a rubber band that needs to stretch before price can go up higher. Kind of like last cycle, it took a while for a rubber band to really truly stretch for it to go up higher. So, but price does look like it impulsively wants to go higher. If you look at the monthly chart, it gives you a little bit of a different flavor. It looks like it does want to break above the upper Bollinger Band. And the first month in May, it really tried to do that, but it's not really been able to do that. Got rejected back all the way down, right? And then so far for the month of June, it actually was able to so far get above the upper Bollinger Band, and it's looking very, very impulsive. It wants to drag the upper Bollinger Band up a lot higher and also expand the Bollinger Band in general. It looks like it wants to curl the 20-month moving average up, which it hasn't really done so really since the rejection over here for these few months over here back in like August 2022. Like this is the first time where you actually see the 20-month moving average actually start to curl up over here. And this is a pretty important trend change that could potentially last for months. The other thing to kind of pay attention to too, if I just get rid of the Bollinger Band, you can see that you really have all of these candles over here really since February 2021 all the way up to now. You have about really 3.5 years of candles, and all of these candles over here are all inside candle, this big giant green candle over here back in January 2021. What do you mean inside candles? Well, all these candles are engulfed by this candle over here, which basically means that this whole thing over here for the last 3.5 years are all just simply sideways consolidation and a descending wedge and a big giant bull flag, which is kind of insane to think about. I guess it makes sense because the whales actually never really left. You actually have about 50% whale like kind of all the way through. If you look at multiple time frame, you look at the 3 month, you can see that whales have come back, right? Retail over here, which is represented by green, has really been diminished. 2 months, same thing, whales came back, retail diminished. And the monthly, you can clearly see there's a trend of decreasing in retail over here with green diminishing, and whales are really started to jump back from around like 55% really all the way up to like in the 65% range. So you have a little bit of a trend change here in terms of whale to retail ratio, and you also have a little bit of a change here in terms of price wanting to close above the upper Bollinger Band and really trying to stretch it out to allow price to go up higher over time. So these are some pretty interesting findings here. Like inside candles, again, that generally means consolidation. And what happens after consolidation? Most of the time, you're having trend continuation. What does it mean for trend continuation? Well, over here, the primary trend is up, right? So it did form a higher high over here compared to all these highs over here. So this is a trend change. This is a macro higher high. As a matter of fact, it's a macro all-time high. And it just formed a higher low over here compared to the low over here, compared to the low over here, compared to all these other lows over here. This is a higher low. This stock wants to go higher. It's just kind of insane to think about. And all of these candles over here for the last 3.5 years are all just inside candle for consolidation for it to go higher. That's the market structure. I'm not here to make the rules. I'm not here to tell you whether or not this is something that you should enter or not. I really don't know. I just find this to be fascinating. That's why I'm talking about it. If you look at another thing here, which is the Ichimoku cloud, these lines and these clouds are formed by these moving period averages. And basically what you end up getting are these lines over here, which is the blue line here called the Tenkan. You have the red line over here called the Kijun. The Tenkan is the leading line, the Kijun is the lagging line. So whenever you have a cross with the blue over red, the leading cross over the lagging, you have a bullish cross. And we just had a bullish cross on the month of May, just from this big giant green candle over here. You have a bullish cross over here. What happened last time we had a bullish cross over here? Around November 2020, you have a big giant green candle that happened a couple months later. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm just saying that there's a possibility that something like that might happen that is not as impulsive as this big giant green candle over here, but it could still be rather bullish and it could push above the cloud. Cloud over here is also calculated based on moving period averages, and these can serve as potentially as resistance and as support. Over here, initially it served as resistance for about a couple months, but price just basically just pierced for like it's nothing, right? And over here, we're having a little bit of consolidation underneath the cloud over here. It looks like we might end up spending a couple months trying to challenge the cloud. Right now, we've touched the monthly Ichimoku cloud once so far. We're not quite there quite just yet. I do think that because the Bollinger Band is really restricting its movement, you have to have some kind of expansion to allow price to kind of start challenging the cloud over here, right? The rubber band has not yet been expanded, so you're having a hard time pushing through up higher. And because of that, you end up kind of just ranging here between the Bollinger Band and between the Ichimoku cloud over here. And you're waiting for things to get more bullish, things maybe need to a little bit more consolidate underneath the cloud over here, building a lot of energy, having a lot more whalish momentum over here, like it did over here, before pushing up price a lot higher through the cloud. Now, it also depends on whether or not we're going to get something unhealthy like it did over here during the last cycle, where you just end up pushing way above the cloud. You didn't even bother back testing the cloud, right? You just kind of hang out here and it just got way over exhausted, and you need about 3.5 years for it to really start to cool down. And it finally cooled down enough, it wants to keep going again. So we'll see. Like, it would be a lot healthier if we are able to kind of push above the cloud and back test it and go up higher. That would be a more reasonable thing for price to have a little bit of a healthier bull trend, right? But right now, like the last cycle, it didn't really do that. The last cycle is actually pretty crazy. I'm going to show you a couple of things as to what I meant by that. One thing is, if you just look at the RSI on the monthly, I'm not even talking about daily, I'm not talking about weekly, I'm talking about monthly. It just went all the way to like 100. It went to like close to 100, like in the high 90s. And then it got just absolutely exhausted, and it just couldn't sustain. Like, it just kept on, our RSI just kept on making these lows. They just kept on going down. The trend's completely exhausted. It's been showing over here too for like 3.5 years, just been going down, right? The so you kind of want to look for something like that. If RSI hits like the 80, 90, 100 range in a hurry on the monthly, it might be time to consider like not coming back. That's just one thought, right? If you also look at the weekly, you can also see a very, very similar trend over here too. On the weekly, it's been kind of having a little bit of bearish divergence over here. A lot of people thought that it might have topped, and next thing you know, you have like an RSI to weekly that went up again to like 100. Like, that's not healthy, right? When it made a little bit of a lower high over here, RSI like is like way down underneath. This tells you there's a big trend exhaustion over there. That's a warning sign, right, for you to potentially get out. Another thing for you to potentially want to think about getting out is like, look at the bull market support band. It catches up service support, but price is not really able to sustain. Like, this looks like it wants to roll over. So whenever you have this look like that, and it keeps on going on like in a prolonged manner, and the whales are leaving, that might be a good time for you to take profit and exit, right? Another thing to kind of look at is you look at the monthly chart. You look at the last cycle over here again, and I'm going to put the Ichimoku cloud over here. We're going to see here in the last cycle, this price just went way too far, way too fast, dragged the Tenkan and Kijun up along with it, and matter of fact, actually dropped underneath the Tenkan and Kijun lines over here, right? And what did it do? End up spending months number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It spent about 9 months trying to backtest the Tenkan and Kijun over here, and it's unable to do so. It's just got rejected, right? And you have a little bit of a bearish cross over here of the Tenkan dropping below the Kijun on the monthly. That's probably a good exit sign over here, right? So these are a potential exit sign to look for potentially during this cycle, although it does look like, based on everything I'm seeing, based on whales coming in, based on increasing liquidity flow, based on the fact that we haven't really have any like significant overheated sentiment with RSI both in monthly and weekly, and based on the fact that there's a lot of energy being built up, based on the fact that we just had a higher low, it does look like it wants to keep on going higher. Now, how it's going to go, the trajectory, is it going to end up having a little bit more of a healthy back test here with the cloud and bounce up higher? Or is it just going to keep going to the moon and just getting exhausted like it did over here? I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that, but that's something to consider, right? So if you, there are two strategies, I guess, if I'm the way I gotta kind of think about it. And again, none of this is financial advice. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. There are two thoughts that I guess people might be thinking about doing, and I'm just speculating what people are doing. Thought number one is, if you know that this is going to go higher, I mean, there might be people who end up buying, kind of the lows, and right now it might still be underneath the Ichimoku cloud. You might try to buy as low as possible, and you might just end up sitting and you wait for a big parabolic move to come like this, if it ends up happening, right? That's one strategy, is to do that. It's kind of like a little bit more like a hauler until you find these kind of warning signs that just kind of show you with RSI being overbought, with the boring support band turning from support to resistance, with the Tenkan and Kijun here looking exhausted with a bearish crossover here in the monthly. So these are all kinds of things that you can look for to tell you have a trend exhaustion and declining whales, right? That's also another sign, right? Now, we don't have the problem so far. The trend is up, right? But there might be people who are just maybe want to buy as low as possible and just end up trying to hollow throughout the cycle. We'll see. I don't know whether or not that's a viable strategy, because nobody really knows whether or not it's going to keep going up higher. But that's one strategy is that you can hold, and it's a valid strategy because it's a higher macro low. It does look like it wants to go higher. You had a bullish crossover here, increase whales, right? The other strategy that I think people can employ is really just trying to buy low and sell high. And you know that this is a very volatile stock, so a lot of traders are having a great time with it. How do you buy low and sell high? Well, there is one strategy, which is the Bollinger Band strategy. By the way, GameStop looks very bullish so far this week, because it looks like a very, very nice hammer candle over here, tapping into demand and found demand as support, and is pushing about the upper Bollinger Band here on the weekly. And you have a very, very strong expansion of the weekly Bollinger Band with the 20-week moving average crawling up. This is a very, very nice look, a very bullish look, if you will. Whales are also increasing. You do have a little bit of overheat RSI over here, but overheat RSI can happen for months and months and months, and that doesn't really bother me, right? And price can even go up higher, even if RSI goes down lower with a bearish divergence. That doesn't really bother me, right? But so far, the market structure looks very nice, looks very healthy. And one way you can look at it is that whenever price just gets way too far above, get overextended, you can sell and you can buy when price get back down inside the Bollinger Band, right? Again, none of this is financial advice, but I can see that being a potential viable strategy. Is when things get way too overextended, where are you going to find the overextension? Well, you can look at the volume shelves. You can try to find some of the resistance level up here, right, around 55, around like the high 40s, around these volume shelves over here. You can try to find support down below down here with these volume shelves down here as well. Like we found support right around the 23 range or around here, right? So you just basically buy, and you don't have to time it necessarily perfectly. I suppose if you're a trader, you just buy inside the Bollinger Band and you try and sell from outside of Bollinger Band whenever it gets too far, too fast at these volume shelves up here. So that's one potential strategies that people can employ. And you can also identify some very important levels too by looking at different time frame, right? For example, you know that this level around here at the volume shelf up here, around 55, that's going to be a very important resistance level. Traders are going to try to trade the range, buy a support instead of resistance. So 55 could potentially be an area where a lot of people might end up trying to sell, right? The other couple of levels you can look at would be, if I go back to the monthly, and if I turn this off, and I was telling you about the Ichimoku cloud, right? The Ichimoku cloud is going to be up here, and the top of the Ichimoku cloud is going to be around 60.7, right? which is where it got rejected from before. The bottom of the Ichimoku cloud is around 51. So around like 51, 55 to 60 is going to be a pretty strong resistance zone, because you have all these potential traders looking at these indicators. They're going to try to want to sell up here, right? And the other thing on the shorter term, in terms of what other resistance could there be, well, we can look at the 2-week chart over here. And on the 2-week chart, I'm going to put up the Bollinger Band. Let me see here. Actually, I'm not going to put up Bollinger Band, I'm going to put up the Ichimoku cloud. And the Ichimoku cloud, on the short term, you can also see like around 40 or so. That could also be a potential resistance zone up here. And we opened these 2 weeks really from last week. Like last Monday, we opened around 40 or so. It immediately got rejected. It just went back down, right? And it went finding support here at the bottom of the Ichimoku cloud on the 2-week chart. So like 40 is going to be an important number. People could potentially end up selling over here, and people potentially end up buying over here in the mid-20s, right? Because we have flipped this resistance over here from the bottom of the 2-week Ichimoku cloud into support. So you're going to have a range maybe around like 20, in the mid-20s to like 40, with the upper bound of the resistance zone around like 50, 55, and 60, somewhere up there, right? And people are going to try to trade this range for as long as possible, because that's what they do. The other support that you might find, in addition to the bottom of the cloud here, which is again around like 26.6, you're also going to see another level of support down here below, which is the Bollinger Band. It's going to end up potentially gravitating back to the Bollinger Band down here in the 2-week chart. I think currently is around 25, right? So that's also going to be a very important level right here around 25. If things dip below 25, I think looks like things just kind of wants to get pot up down here. So 25, 26 seems to be a pretty important support level up here. Okay? Something to kind of think about. On the weekly, you can also see a very confluent zone over here around 27. That's also a potential gravitation or support zone over here. And you might end up having a lot of people end up buying the dip as long as it goes underneath this Bollinger Band, because of these Bollinger Band traders. That's what they're trying to do, right? And then finally, if I just take the Bollinger Band off, and I just look at another indicator, which is called the Super-Ichi cloud, you can see that Super-Ichi cloud has actually surfaced very, very clear support over here, where the top of the cloud, which is around, which is around 24.5, was indeed support. And you also have the Tenkan and Kijun line underneath over here to also have service support during this week at around 24 and 23, right? So you're going to have a lot of traders trying to come back down and trying to buy the zone over here in the mid-20s because of that. And you might end up having a lot more ranging between 40 to mid-20s for quite some time, consolidate around here, form a little bit of a symmetric triangle even before pushing up higher is my guess. But that's what's happening. That's what I'm seeing. If you ask me in terms of what I think GME is going to do, I think GME is going to go up over time. But I can also give you targets and things like that eventually. I think if you really want to find out what the potential target is for GME, I want you to pay attention to a video that we did together with the Triumvirate. I have a Triumvirate channel that I just talked about GME with the Tesla tracker and the Great Masby, and we're going to do a live stream again tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. We may not talk about GME, or we might. We'll see. But those are my thoughts so far. Thank you so much for listening. I think it's probably going to go up higher. As to how much higher, there is an Elliott Wave expert, which is Tesla tracker, and there's also a GAN square and GAN theory expert, which is the Great Masby. Those folks are probably going to be able to tell you a lot more about targets, whereas I'm a trend guy. I follow trend. I'm a trend cat. I follow trend. The trend looks good. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Have a good one. Bye.